Nasdaq TradeTalks. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq, coming to you live from Toronto, Consensus 2025 by CoinDesk. Joining me for this segment, we have Tim Kwok. He's head of sales for Americas at Talos. And we are here to discuss digital asset infrastructure and solutions to drive institutional adoption and scalability. It is great to see you, Tim. Welcome to Trade Talk.
Thank you for having me, Jill.
Let's talk about that institutional adoption, what you're seeing from some of the larger names within this space, and what the catalyst is right now.
Yeah, it's a great question. What we've seen really is a lot of risk and compliance tools. So operational kind of tools, effectively how large institutions can scale their business, but also how it fits into their existing workflow, right? So they may not be crypto native. They're coming from traditional assets. They trade equities, fixed income. How does that look against their portfolio with bonds, with equities, with indexes, especially if they're invested in ETFs now? They want to look at their broad-based exposure, inclusive of their spot Bitcoin exposure.
These platforms are being built, or these solutions are being built with the client's mindset first.
Yeah.
Which is encouraging to hear.
Exactly. Where, navigating a large institution, those types of tools is table stakes. Like it's business as usual in terms of what they need. And then getting the kind of firms comfortable with that type of exposure. There needs to be risk control, who your counterparties are. And then effectively, there's a lot of layers there at a large institution. That is what they care about in terms of on top of just investing in the asset in and of itself.
What about growth areas in markets?
Yeah, in markets, it's, in the state specific, I'll talk broadly, right?
Yeah.
But specifically in Americas, where we've seen a lot of growth, obviously, given the friendlier regime. So things have kind of gone positive in that direction. We've also seen a lot of growth. We're here in Toronto right now. So obviously in Canada, a lot of the retail brokers are kind of spinning up operations, if not already operating in the space. But then also, the general theme, I think, at this conference, as far as stablecoins, tokenized assets, those types of things, we've seen a lot of that coming out of Latin America. Right. So in that kind of space, that's mainly the large, top that a lot of folks are either driving towards or kind of building interesting solutions for. And then broadly, retail brokers, things like that in Southeast Asia, we've seen a lot of growth there, kind of going for that type of demand.
Yeah. When it comes to stable coins, that is a massive TAM there.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there are a number of areas around the world that are leveraging that technology already to grow microeconomies, e-commerce, alternative forms of capital formation, and so forth. Those technologies are being used at this point.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just it's conduit also of like most people are actually everybody is very familiar with FX, right? So just kind of that stablecoin conversation, inclusive of FX. Those are the workflows that are being worked on now, right? And coming to the forefront. So that's what we've seen a lot of growth there as well.
How are you seeing the market infrastructure evolve in response to the global demands?
What we've seen, kind of what I mentioned earlier, right? Like it's exactly kind of a lot of people want to make sure that the risk engine or the operational kind of call it the unsexy part of the business. Well, some people may think it's good, right? But that part of that business is fully kind of in tune and up to like large scalability institutional standards that people want. The execution portion, best execution, smart order routing tool that Talos has, that's table stakes as well. But now it's more about getting from that 0 to 1 moment effectively of getting those operational or risk kind of counterparties comfortable with that risk.
If you are a smaller institution or you started as a crypto first manager, you're almost ahead of the game because you don't have to, deal with the mechanics behind integration of legacy and newer assets.
Exactly. You're a lot more nimble, right? So you can do everything in one place. You're comfortable using like that type of system. When you're trading other assets and other within your portfolio, you have to think about those types of things, right? There's not cash flows in crypto, but effectively there, how does your bond portfolio stack up? And how do you look at that type of risk against your crypto risk? So what we've seen there is a lot of growth of understanding and ability to look across your entire portfolio in a uniform manner and understand that risk holistically at a macro level. So, and those types of tools are what Talos provides and what other, large institutions are looking for.
Once we get more clarity around regulatory framework here in the US, as you start to think about really things happening globally at scale, do you think that will help institutions feel more comfortable and continue to adopt these technologies?
Absolutely. The clarity is necessary, right? I think most folks won't move until get that absolute clarity. Some are willing to be a little bit more on the forefront of that, and they've made their opinions already, but the regime has definitely shifted and become a lot more friendly. So I think that will, act as a catalyst for institutions slowly into the space. But I'd make the analogy that those large institutions, a bank, a large traditional asset manager that's been, in the equity space for 30 years, it's like moving a battlefield, right? So it takes time. I definitely think, the watershed moment, as most have said, is the ETF approval last year, right? Now, within that, people have gotten comfortable. People are now educated, and we've come a long way in terms of the education and the ability to understand exactly how this market works and across all types of assets within it as well.
All right. Appreciate the insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. And thanks for joining me from Consensus and Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.